In this video, I'll be sharing 10 game-changing websites that every software engineer must know about. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about what these websites are, why you should be using them, and how you can get started with them. Hey folks, I'm Addy, a 27-year-old mechatronics and software engineer with around half a decade of experience. And during my career, I've come across thousands of websites, some of which have been absolute game changers. So for this video, I thought I'd curate a list of the top 10 websites that I think all software engineers need to know about. Oh, and this list goes way beyond basic websites like LeetCode or Stack Overflow. So grab a coffee, take a seat, and let's jump right into it. Okay, so if you've ever had to set up a README file for a new GitHub repository, then you're going to absolutely love the first website on this list. Now, setting up a README file can quite often be a tedious task. You want it to look professional and provide all the necessary information, but formatting and structuring it can be really time consuming. And that's because README files use something known as Markdown, which requires precise syntax to ensure proper formatting. So for example, missing a single space or using the wrong type of bracket can result in headers not displaying correctly or links breaking. So this is where the first website on this list, which is readme.so, comes in. So it simplifies the process of creating a README file by providing a user-friendly editor where all you need to do is click on sections that you'd like to include and customize them to your liking. To show you how easy it is to use, let's create a simple README file right now. We'll start off by adding a logo for our project along with a title and a description. Next, we'll add a section with instructions on how to run this project locally, how to run the test suite. We'll also follow that up with an API reference guide, and we'll also add in a demo link and a few screenshots for our project. Finally, we'll wrap up this README file with an author section as well as a license of use section. And just like that, within a few minutes, we've got a fully formatted README file whose Markdown can then be copied and pasted into the project that you'd like to use it in. Moving on to website number 2. And this website is for those of you whose browser tabs look something like this. So generally, when working on multiple parts of an application at the same time, I find myself needing to look up documentation for each programming language and framework that my project uses. So one moment I might need to look up TypeScript's type definitions, and the next I might need to check Python's standard library or Postgres's query syntax. And the only way for me to do this is to open a new browser tab every time I need some information, and from there it's only a matter of time before my browser tabs begin to look like a complete mess. So this is where the second website on this list, which is devdocs.io, comes in. DevDocs combines documentation for basically every programming language and framework into one easy-to-use interface. The UI is extremely clean and fast, and it allows you to search through different types of documentation seamlessly. Need to look at how generic types work in TypeScript? That's easy enough to do. Need to remind yourself of the syntax for Django's URL routing? You can do that as well. Or maybe you need to remind yourself how Postgres inner join clauses work. No problem, because DevDocs has you covered as well. So by aggregating all this information in one place, DevDocs significantly improves your productivity and helps you quickly find the information you need without any hassle. Moving on, website number 3 is one of my absolute favorites as a web developer. So imagine you're in the middle of developing a sleek, modern web application. You've just used the CSS grid layout feature to make the user interface pop. Now everything looks perfect on your device and you're excited to ship it to production. But then disaster strikes. Some users start reporting that the site looks broken on their browsers, and after some debugging, you quickly realize that some of those users are using browsers or versions of browsers that don't exactly support grid layout. This kind of scenario happens quite often and can be an absolute nightmare for web developers. Now, this is where the third website on this list, which is called caniuse.com, becomes an absolute lifesaver. So caniuse.com allows you to check the compatibility of different CSS features and properties across different browsers and their versions. So all you need to do is search for the CSS feature or property that you want to use, and you'll immediately see a detailed breakdown of which browsers support it and to what extent. Honestly, caniuse.com has saved my butt so many times to the point where I've bookmarked it and made it a part of my development toolkit. Moving on to website number 4, this one is a true gem for those working with machine learning models. Okay, so sometimes certain projects require you to implement cutting-edge natural language processing models, maybe like a customer service chatbot that needs to understand and respond to customer queries. But if you're on a tight deadline, or have a tight budget, or maybe have limited experience with machine learning, then training and fine-tuning these models from scratch can be a very daunting task. This is where the 4th website on this list, which is huggingface.co, comes in. Hugging Face provides a platform where you can access pre-trained models for various natural language processing tasks such as text classification, translation, and even basic question answering. So let's say I wanted to integrate a text-to-speech model into my project, which is a model that takes in text as an input and generates an audio file of an AI-generated narrator for that project. To get started, I'd browse through available models that Hugging Face has to offer and maybe sort by number of downloads if I wanted to find the most popular model. Now, once I've found a model that I'm happy with, I'll follow the installation instructions outlined by the author.
And just like that, within a few minutes, I have a working text-to-speech model that I can use for my project.
And if you ever get stuck during this process of installing these models, the site offers extensive documentation and a very supportive community to help you along every step of the way. The next website is a godsend for those of you who are constantly in need of high quality design resources, but don't want to spend hours searching through hundreds, if not thousands of websites. It's called undesign.learn.uno and is basically a collection of resources for makers, developers, and designers. Need icons for your project? They've got them. Need duotone backgrounds? You can easily generate your own with just a few clicks. Need a library of UI components for your project? They've got some of the most aesthetic and user-friendly components available for absolutely free. Having hundreds of resources curated into a single website is an amazing time saver for anyone who requires high quality design assets and doesn't want to go through the hassle of searching through the internet for those resources. Alright, so website number 6 is for those of you who are always curious. It's for those of you who want to build things from scratch, like maybe your own database, your own implementation of Git, your own search engine, or your own physics engine, and so much more. And even better, it's for those of you who want to build these things but need guidance on how to actually get started. So this is where Build Your Own X, which is technically a GitHub repository and not a website, comes in. This GitHub repository provides a collection of tutorials and guides that help you build your own versions of various complex software systems from scratch. Now, whether it's a simple shell script or a full-fledged 3D renderer, each project comes with detailed instructions and explanations on how to get started. And by following these guides, you not only get to build something that's tangible, but you also get to gain a deep understanding of how these systems actually work internally. And this hands-on approach is really going to enhance your learning experience and really equip you with practical skills that are extremely important in the software engineering field. Website number 7 is a really simple one and is for those of you who'd like to create code snippets like this to add to either documentation or maybe even share with your friends or colleagues at work. It's called ray.so and the website provides you with a simple editor to craft a really aesthetic snippet of your code. All you need to do is paste in some code, and from there you can customize things like the programming language for proper syntax highlighting, the theme of your snippet, whether or not you'd like to use dark theme, and even the padding around your snippet. And once you're satisfied with how the snippet actually looks, you can easily download it as an image or share it directly with others through a URL. Now, it's a really simple but an extremely handy tool for making your code snippets look really professional and visually appealing. Next up is a tool that every web developer who deals with CSS layouts is going to find incredibly useful. So have you ever tried to create a website of some sort that has cool looking layouts like this? Well, if you have, then you'd know that to achieve those layouts, you need to be quite good at CSS Flexbox and CSS Grid. And both of those are notorious for being challenging to master, often requiring a lot of trial and error to get everything looking just right. Now this is where layout.bradwoods.io comes in. It's a CSS layout generator that simplifies the process of creating complex layouts. Now with a simple user interface, you can visually design your layout without having to write a single line of code. You can add containers, set their properties, and see the results in real time. And once you're happy with the layout, you can basically export the CSS code and integrate it into your project. Now this tool saves you a ton of time and effort, making it easier to create responsive, well-structured layouts without the usual headaches that they bring with them. Now websites 9 and 10 are for those of you that want to get better at CSS, but really struggle with it. It's for those of you who keep fiddling around with CSS values until the UI you're building looks correct, but you aren't really sure if the CSS changes you've made are actually correct. So CSS can be broken down into two main subcategories: selectors and styling. Now before you're even able to apply styling to an element on a website, you'll need to use CSS selectors to actually grab or select that element. Now this is where website 9, which is CSS Diner, comes in. So CSS Diner introduces a fun, interactive game that challenges you to select different food items on a table that's represented by an HTML file. The game tests your knowledge of various CSS selectors such as element selectors, class selectors, ID selectors, nested list selectors, sibling selectors, and so much more. And the challenges get progressively harder, but by the end of it, you'll be a master of selecting elements using CSS. Styling is what comes after you've mastered selectors, and this is where website number 10, which is CSS Battle, comes in. So CSS Battle offers you fun challenges that force you to write HTML and CSS to create styles that match a target image. For example, it tests your knowledge of CSS properties like position, transform, flexbox, and even grid. And once you're done, the website will run a diff between what you've created and the reference image, and it'll basically give you a score. You can also view top solutions to see if you manage to write your HTML and CSS in the most efficient manner. Now honestly, just spending a few hours a week on any of these websites is guaranteed to level up your coding skills. But if you were looking for something more specific to web development, then you might want to check out this video instead.